The morning started like any other, sunlight breaking through the curtains, the smell of coffee filling the air. Ethan leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone, reading headlines about a strange flu spreading across cities. He didn't pay much attention until the screams started. Within hours, the world fell apart. The infected weren't human anymore. Their eyes were white, their skin gray and rotting. They moved fast, hungry for flesh, tearing through everything in their path. Ethan ran through the streets, watching cars crash, people beg for help until he found her. Lena. She was crying beside a ruined bus, clutching her little brother, Leo, who was bitten. Ethan grabbed her hand, pulled her away as Leo screamed her name before turning into one of them. That day the world ended, but for Ethan and Lena, it was also the day their story began. 3 months later. The cities were silent now. Smoke rose from the ruins, and the once busy roads were littered with burned cars and bones bleached by the sun. Ethan and Lena had changed. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were ghosts of the people they used to be. They moved from town to town, scavenging food, hiding from the infected, and avoiding the new monsters of the apocalypse, other humans. One night while resting in an abandoned motel, they heard voices. A group approached, armed, organized, and dangerous. "Put the gun down," a tall man ordered. His name was Reed, leader of a ruthless survivor gang known as the Scavengers. Ethan refused. Reed smirked, brave, stupid, but brave. A gunshot rang out, Lena screamed. Ethan hit the ground, blood on his shoulder. But before Reed could finish him, the infected swarmed the motel. Lena dragged Ethan out the back door, as the screams of Reed's men echoed behind them. That night under the broken stars, Ethan looked at Lena and whispered, "We keep moving for both of us." And she nodded, wiping her tears, promising herself she wouldn't lose anyone else. 2 weeks later, rain poured endlessly. The world smelled like rust and death. Ethan's wound had begun to heal, though the scar burned when the cold set in. Lena had learned to patch him up, using whatever she could find, torn shirts, alcohol from broken bars, even duct tape once. That night they camped in a forest clearing, a small fire flickering under a makeshift tarp. The crackle of flames was comforting, until they heard footsteps. Ethan raised his rifle. "Who's there?" From the shadows stepped a man, tall, bearded, eyes hollow yet kind. His clothes were torn, but he carried no weapon. "Easy," he said, hands raised. "Name Caleb. I'm not here to steal or fight, just trying to survive like you." Lena exchanged a glance with Ethan. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, but loneliness was worse. Over the fire, Caleb spoke softly. He told them about a rumored safe zone beyond the mountains, a place called Haven Point, protected, clean, and guarded by soldiers. Ethan didn't believe him, but Lena's eyes lit up for the first time in months. "A safe place, a real one," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "If we start tomorrow, we can make it in a week." Ethan stared into the fire, torn between hope and fear. He'd seen too many safe zones turn into nightmares, but something about Lena's trembling smile made him say the words he didn't believe. "Then we'll go." The morning came cold and gray. Mist clung to the ground as Ethan, Lena, and Caleb began their long journey toward Haven Point. They moved through forests that had grown wild again, where silence ruled and every sound, a branch snapping, a bird taking flight, made their hearts race. Ethan walked ahead, rifle ready. Lena followed close, clutching her backpack. Caleb carried a map so worn it barely held together. For the first few days, things went smoothly, too smoothly. They found canned food in an overturned truck, rainwater collected in barrels, and even a small cabin to rest in. But on the 4th night, as they camped beside an old highway, everything changed. From the darkness came a moan, low, broken, human. Then another. And another. Dozens of infected emerged from the fog, drawn to the scent of fire and life. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They bolted across the highway, weaving between abandoned cars. One of the infected grabbed Lena's arm. She screamed. Caleb turned back and swung his crowbar, cracking its skull open. They didn't stop until their lungs burned. When they finally collapsed in an empty field, silence returned, except for Lena's ragged breathing. Ethan looked at her arm, trembling. A deep scratch, but no bite. She was safe for now. Under the fading moonlight, she whispered, "Maybe Haven Point is real. It has to be." Ethan didn't answer, but in his chest, for the first time since the world ended, a small spark of hope stirred. They reached the outskirts of an old town 2 days later, a place once called Ridgeway. The signs were still there, faded and rusted, pointing toward what used to be schools, diners, and homes. Now everything was silent except for the wind. Ethan moved cautiously through the streets, scanning rooftops. "Too quiet," he muttered. Caleb nodded. "Places like this, they're never empty." Lena stopped suddenly, staring at a half-collapsed house. Her eyes widened. "I know this place," she whispered. It was her old home. The walls were burned, windows shattered, but her mother's wind chime still hung by the door, broken, but swaying in the breeze. Without thinking, she walked in. Her voice trembled as she whispered names, her parents, her brother Leo, as if they might answer, but only silence replied. Ethan found her sitting on the floor of what used to be her room, clutching a small, dusty photo. In it, her, Leo, and their parents smiling. Ethan knelt beside her. "We can't stay here long." "I know," she said softly, "but I needed to say goodbye." Outside, Caleb kept watch, and that's when he saw movement. Figures, not infected humans, armed. He whispered sharply, "We've got company." Ethan grabbed Lena's hand, pulling her from the ruins as gunshots cracked through the air. They ran through alleys past burned cars until they reached the edge of town. Behind them, Reed's voice echoed. "Run all you want, Ethan. You owe me blood." Reed was alive, and now he was hunting them. Night had fallen again, thick, cold, and heavy with the scent of rain. They ran for miles before stopping in the ruins of an old church, half swallowed by vines. Inside, the flicker of their lantern cast long shadows across the cracked walls. Ethan sat by the door, gun in hand, eyes scanning the darkness. Lena tended to Caleb's bruised arm. He'd fallen during the chase. "Reed," she whispered, anger in her voice. "I thought he was dead." Ethan's jaw tightened. So did I. Reed had once been part of their group, before greed and fear turned him into a monster. He betrayed them for supplies, left people behind to die. Ethan had barely survived the ambush that followed. Now Reed wanted revenge, not just for survival but for pride. Rain started pouring outside, masking the sounds of their breath. Suddenly, Caleb froze. "Footsteps," he hissed. A gunshot shattered the silence, the bullet tearing through the church door. Ethan dove behind a pew, returning fire. Glass exploded, echoing through the empty hall. Lena screamed as the infected, drawn by the noise, began pounding at the windows. "Great," Ethan growled, reloading. "Read outside, monsters inside." They fought desperately, shooting, stabbing, blocking the doors with broken benches. Blood and rain mixed on the floor. Then, just as the last infected fell, they heard Reed's voice through the storm. "You can't run forever, Ethan. Haven Point isn't real, and neither is hope." But Ethan looked at Lena, her face streaked with tears and ash, and whispered, "He's wrong. Hope's all we have left." They slipped through the back window, disappearing into the storm once more. Dawn crept over the horizon, pale and broken, as the trio reached what Caleb's map called the Devil's Crossing, an old suspension bridge that stretched across a ravine filled with wrecked cars and corpses. Lena stared at it, her voice trembling. "You're kidding me, we have to cross that." The bridge groaned in the wind, metal cables swaying like spiderwebs. Half the boards were missing, and below, the faint echo of growls. Infected still wandered the depths, trapped in the pit of bones and rust. Caleb squinted ahead. There's no other way. Haven Point's just beyond those hills. Ethan tested the first plank it held, but barely. One at a time, slow. They moved carefully, step by step, the bridge moaning beneath them. Lena's hands shook as she held the rope. Halfway across, the wind picked up, sharp, cold, carrying something else. A shot. Wood splintered near Ethan's feet. Reed, he was on the cliff, rifle aimed, shouting, "You can't outrun me, Ethan." Ethan shouted back, "You've lost everything, why keep fighting?" Reed's laughter echoed, "Because you still have something to lose." More bullets ripped through the air. Caleb spun, firing back, buying them time. But a bullet caught his leg, he fell, nearly slipping through the gap. "Caleb!" Lena screamed, grabbing his hand. Ethan dropped his gun, pulling both of them up. Together, they stumbled across the final stretch, just as the bridge collapsed behind them, swallowing Reed's echo into the ravine below. They lay on the dirt, gasping, shaking, alive. Caleb clutched his bleeding leg, forcing a grin. "Next time," he panted, "we take the scenic route." Lena laughed through tears. Ethan just looked out at the horizon, where the sun burned through the clouds, and for the first time, Haven Point didn't feel like a myth. They found an old farmhouse a few miles past the bridge, a quiet, lonely place that looked untouched by the chaos outside. Ivy crawled up the walls, and a broken swing swayed softly in the wind. Inside, it smelled of dust and forgotten lives, but it was shelter. Lena helped Caleb onto a couch, wincing at his bleeding leg. Ethan searched the kitchen, finding a few cans of beans and a rusted first aid kit. For the first time in days, they could breathe. As night fell, rain began to pour again. The sound on the roof was strangely peaceful, a rhythm that almost made them forget the world had ended. Ethan and Lena sat by the fire. She leaned against him, her eyes half closed. "You think we'll make it?" she asked softly. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We have to, for all we've lost." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment there was something warm, something real, something alive. But not everyone shared that peace. Caleb sat in the corner, watching them. His eyes were shadowed not just by pain but something darker. Later that night, Ethan woke to a sound, the creak of the door. He grabbed his gun and moved silently toward it. Caleb was outside, limping toward the tree line, clutching the map. Ethan followed him and hissed, "Caleb, what the hell are you doing?" Caleb turned, guilt written all over his face. "I didn't lie about Haven Point," he said, "but it's not what you think. They don't let everyone in. I was supposed to bring someone back, someone useful." Ethan froze. "You sold us out." Caleb's voice broke. "I didn't want to, but Reed wasn't working alone. Haven Point's guards hired him to bring survivors they could control. They don't save people, they use them." Before Ethan could respond, a blinding light swept over them, a helicopter's spotlight roaring above. "Targets located," a voice barked through a speaker. Lena burst from the house, terrified. "Ethan!" Gunfire erupted. Caleb fell to his knees, shouting, "Go, I'm sorry." Ethan grabbed Lena and ran into the forest as explosions lit the night sky, the farmhouse going up in flames behind them. The last thing he saw before the fire swallowed it was Caleb's silhouette, disappearing into the light. Smoke still clung to their clothes as Ethan and Lena pushed through the forest, breathless and bruised. The world behind them burned, and somewhere in those flames, Caleb's scream faded into silence. For 3 days they walked without rest. No food, no map, just instinct. But the closer they got to Haven Point, the more the air changed, cleaner, colder, almost civilized. Then at dawn they saw it. High walls made of steel and barbed wire, searchlights sweeping the hills, and a giant flag that read, "Haven Point, humanity's last sanctuary." Lena's eyes filled with tears. It's real. Ethan's jaw tightened. Real doesn't mean safe. As they approached, soldiers appeared, clean uniforms, polished weapons, eyes sharp and empty. They scanned Ethan and Lena, demanded their weapons, and led them through massive gates that clanged shut behind them. Inside, Haven Point looked perfect. Rows of greenhouses, children playing, people smiling as if the world outside didn't exist. It almost felt like a dream, but dreams in this world always came with a price. That night, as they rested in a clean, white-walled dormitory, Lena whispered, "Maybe we can start over here." But Ethan couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. Everyone here moved like clockwork, too calm, too obedient. Then he heard it, muffled screams beneath the floors. He followed the sound through the halls until he found a locked steel door marked Sector 9, Restricted Access. He pressed his ear against it. Voices, orders. Bring the next batch in for testing. Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned back, only to find a soldier behind him, gun raised. "Mr. Cole," the soldier said, smiling without warmth. "Director Harlow been expecting you." Ethan's heart pounded as he was led deeper underground, and realization hit him like a bullet. Haven Point wasn't a sanctuary. It was a lab. Cold metal walls surrounded Ethan as he was dragged deep underground, through sterile corridors lined with flickering lights. The deeper they went, the louder the hum of machines grew, mixed with faint human cries. When the soldier finally stopped, he shoved Ethan into a white room. Inside stood a woman in a gray coat, her hair tied neatly, her smile sharp as glass. "I'm Dr. Harlow," she said. "Welcome to Haven Point." Ethan's wrists ached against the restraints. "You're experimenting on survivors," he spat. Her smile didn't falter. "We're curing humanity. The infected virus can't be stopped, only controlled. We test immunity, blood resistance. The ones who survive live comfortably. The others," she tilted her head, "serve a higher purpose." Ethan's stomach turned. "You mean you kill them?" "Not kill," she said softly. "Sacrifice." He lunged forward, but guards pinned him back. Harlow stepped closer, studying him like a specimen. "Your blood survived multiple exposures, Mr. Cole. You're the most resistant subject we've seen." Meanwhile, Lena was above ground, confused, scared. Soldiers had told her Ethan was being processed. She didn't believe them. She searched the camp at night, slipping past the guards, until she found a stairwell hidden behind a medical ward. The air grew colder with each step, and then she heard it. Ethan's voice, faint but angry. She peeked through a glass window. Ethan was strapped to a table, wires attached to his veins. Machines beeped. Harlow stood over him, injecting something into his arm. "No," Lena screamed, bursting through the door. She grabbed a syringe from a counter and jammed it into the guard's neck. Ethan yanked against his restraints as alarms blared. Harlow hissed, backing away. "You're throwing away humanity's future." Lena cut Ethan loose. "Then maybe humanity doesn't deserve this future." Together, they fought their way out, gunfire echoing through sterile halls, red lights flashing like blood in glass. They escaped into the night through a storm drain, gasping for air as Haven Point burned behind them. Ethan looked at the compound, the illusion shattered. "Haven Point was never salvation," he said. "It was hell with electricity." Lena took his hand, trembling. "Then we make our own haven." And in the darkness, hand in hand, they ran toward the mountains, free, but hunted again. The night swallowed them whole as Ethan and Lena climbed through the wilderness, Haven Point's burning lights flickering far behind like dying stars. They didn't stop until dawn. Exhausted and soaked with rain, they collapsed in a cave hidden among the rocks. Lena's hands trembled as she wrapped a bandage around Ethan's arm. The injection site still glowed, faintly blue. "What did she do to you?" she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know, but I can feel it. My body's burning inside. She reached for his face. We'll fix it, we'll find a way. But deep down, Ethan wasn't sure there was anything left to fix. As the sun rose, the world looked deceptively peaceful, forests blooming again, rivers shimmering clean. Nature was reclaiming what humans had destroyed. Yet behind the beauty, the infected still roamed. By afternoon, they stumbled upon something unexpected. A group of survivors, living in makeshift cabins built from wrecked buses and scrap metal. A man stepped forward, rifle lowered but cautious. "You're from Haven Point." Ethan hesitated. "We escaped." The man's face darkened. "Then you know they took my wife for testing. None ever came back." The survivors took them in, offering food and warmth. For the first time in months, laughter filled the night. Children played near the fire, people told stories not of death but of living. Lena smiled faintly. "Maybe this is the real Haven," she said. Ethan wanted to believe it, but later that night he woke up sweating, veins glowing faintly under his skin. His reflection in the broken mirror showed something terrifying. His eyes were changing. He stumbled outside, clutching his chest. "No, no." Lena ran to him. "Ethan, what's happening?" "I think," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Harlow's serum, it's turning me into one of them." Lena's heart shattered. "No, you fought too hard to die like this." But Ethan smiled weakly, touching her cheek. "Maybe this isn't death. Maybe it's the second chance we've been chasing." And as thunder rolled over the hills, his pulse faded and then stopped. Rain poured for hours, drowning the firelight and washing away the world in shades of gray. Lena knelt beside Ethan's body, her tears mixing with the storm. His skin was cold now, his face still, but somehow peaceful, as if he'd found rest in a world that had none. The survivors buried him beneath the old oak tree behind their camp. Lena placed his dog tags over the grave, whispering through trembling lips, "I'll keep your promise. I'll survive for both of us." But that night the wind changed. From the forest came a sound, a low, guttural breath. The guards raised their rifles, thinking the infected had found them again. But then the sound became words. "Lena." Her blood ran cold. She turned toward the trees, and there he was, Ethan. Soaked, pale and trembling, but standing, alive. Or something close to it. Lena ran to him, disbelief and fear battling inside her. His eyes now glowed faintly with the same blue shimmer from Harlow's serum. But he wasn't like the infected, his mind was still there. "I don't understand," she whispered. Ethan touched her cheek with shaking hands. "Neither do I should have died, but I didn't. I can feel it, the virus, the cure, whatever she did. It's inside me, fighting itself." The camp stared in awe and horror. One of the men shouted, "He's infected." Guns were raised. Ethan backed away, his voice calm but desperate. "I'm not like them. Please, I can control it." Lena stepped between him and the rifles. "He's not a threat," she yelled. "He's the reason I'm still alive." The camp leader hesitated, then lowered his weapon. "If that's true, maybe he's the key to ending this nightmare." Ethan looked down at his trembling hands, veins glowing, heartbeat steady. "Maybe I am," he said softly. "Maybe that's my second chance." And as dawn broke through the storm, painting the sky gold, Ethan and Lena stood together once more, no longer running, no longer lost. The war wasn't over, but for the first time humanity had hope. Weeks passed. The world, scarred and broken, began to whisper again, not with screams or gunfire, but with life. Ethan became something of a legend among the survivors, the man who died and came back, not as a monster, but as proof that humanity's end wasn't final. His blood, a fusion of the virus and Harlow's serum, held something miraculous, control. The scientists among the survivor camp began working with him, carefully studying his blood, creating what they called the Dawn strain. A cure, or at least, a light against the dark. Lena never left his side. Through every fever, every trembling episode when the infection tried to take him again, she was there, holding his hand, whispering the same words he once told her. "Hope's all we have left." Soon other survivor groups came. Word of a man who could walk among the infected without being torn apart spread like wildfire. They came with fear, awe, and desperate belief. One night, standing on a cliff overlooking what used to be Haven Point, now just ashes and steel, Ethan watched the sun rise. The light spilled over the valley like gold, chasing away the gray. Lena stepped beside him, smiling softly. "You did it," she whispered. He shook his head. "We did, all of us, even the ones we lost." She took his hand, fingers intertwining with his. For the first time in years, their hearts were quiet, no running, no fighting, just peace. Below them, survivors rebuilt. Children's laughter echoed through the ruins. The world, though scarred, was breathing again. Ethan looked at Lena, the woman who had survived hell with him, and smiled. "This is our second chance," he said. "Let's make it count." And as the sun rose over the new world, its light bathed them both, not as survivors of the apocalypse, but as the beginning of something new. Months passed since Ethan's blood became the key to saving humanity. The dawn strain was spreading slowly, carefully, across the surviving settlements. For the first time, the infected numbers began to fall. The world was healing. But peace never comes without a shadow. Reports began to surface, people injected with early versions of the cure showing strange side effects. Strength beyond normal humans, eyes glowing faintly blue like Ethan. Some called them guardians, others called them abominations. Ethan, now leading the rebuilding efforts, refused to ignore it. "We can't repeat the mistakes of Haven Point," he told the council. "No more secrets, no more control." But some didn't agree. A faction began forming, led by a man named Merck, once a soldier from Haven Point who had escaped before its fall. He believed the mutation was the next stage of evolution. "The weak die," Merck said. "The strong rebuild." When Ethan refused to weaponize the cure, Merck's followers left the camp, taking with them stolen samples of the Dawn strain. Lena could see the worry in Ethan's eyes. "You can't save everyone," she whispered one night. Ethan looked at her, his gaze haunted but firm. "Maybe not everyone, but I can stop the ones trying to destroy what's left." And as lightning cracked across the sky, he prepared for one last fight, not for survival this time, but for the soul of the new world they had built. The dawn that rose over the valley was blood-red, not with sunrise but with fire. Smoke billowed in the distance where Merck's faction, calling themselves the Ascended, had attacked a nearby settlement. Survivors fled toward Ethan's camp, wounded and terrified. The dream of peace was breaking apart. Ethan stood before his people, wearing his old combat gear for the first time in months. His veins still glowed faintly beneath his skin, but he had learned to control the mutation. It gave him strength, speed, and clarity no ordinary human possessed. "This ends today," he said. "No more running, no more hiding. We finish this for everyone we've lost." Lena stood beside him, her eyes fierce. "Together," she said. The final battle came at dusk. Ethan led the survivors through the ruins of what was once Haven Point, poetic, in a cruel way. The place that had once been humanity's cage now became its battlefield. Merck waited among the burning towers, his soldiers enhanced by the stolen serum. His eyes blazed blue. "You should have joined me, Ethan," he sneered. "You're not human anymore, you're like me." Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle. "Maybe, but I remember what it means to be human." They clashed in a blur of violence and chaos, gunfire, screams, lightning flashing against the smoke. Lena fought beside him, fierce and unyielding. The Ascended fell one by one, but Merck was relentless, his strength monstrous. He struck Ethan down, pinning him against the rubble. "You can't stop evolution," Merck roared. Ethan coughed blood but smiled through it. Maybe not, but I can stop you. With the last of his strength, Ethan jammed a vial of purified Dawn strain into Merrick's chest. The serum reacted violently, purging the unstable mutation inside him. Merrick's scream echoed through the ruins as his body disintegrated into ash. The battlefield fell silent. Lena rushed to Ethan, holding him as he collapsed. His glow was fading, the mutation burning out. "Stay with me," she pleaded, tears streaking her face. He smiled faintly. "It's okay, this is what it was all for." The survivors gathered around them as the smoke cleared, the first rays of morning breaking through. Lena whispered, voice trembling but strong, "You gave them a second chance, Ethan, all of us." He looked at her one last time, eyes soft. "So did you." Then his hand went still, but his face held peace. Days later, the survivors built a monument where he fell. Upon it, carved into stone, were 3 words that rebuilt the world. Hope never dies. And as years passed, the story of Ethan and Lena, of love born in apocalypse and reborn in peace, became the spark that guided the new world into its third chance.